There is a quiet, unsettling day that many people experience at least once in their lives. It does not come with drama. It does not announce itself loudly. It arrives in silence, often after a disappointment, a betrayal, a forgotten birthday, an unanswered message, or a moment of emotional need that no one seems to notice. It is the day you realize no one cares about you the way you thought they did. And on that day, everything changes. Psychologically, this realization is not about literal abandonment. It is not about the objective truth that no one in the world cares. It is about perception. It is about the collapse of an expectation. From early childhood, human beings are wired to seek care, validation, and emotional responsiveness. According to attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby, our earliest experiences with caregivers shape our internal working model of relationships. If we were soothed when we cried, noticed when we smiled, protected when we were afraid, our nervous system learned that we matter. If care was inconsistent, conditional, or absent, our system learned something else, that attention must be earned, chased, or feared as unstable. As we grow older, this need does not disappear. It evolves. We begin to look for emotional recognition from friends, partners, colleagues, and society itself. We want someone to notice when we are tired. We want someone to remember our preferences. We want someone to check in without being asked. This desire is not weakness. It is biology. The human brain is deeply social. Neuroscience shows that social rejection activates similar neural pathways as physical pain. When we feel ignored or emotionally unseen, the brain processes it as a threat to survival. In early human history, isolation meant danger. Our nervous system still carries that ancient code. The thought pattern, "no one cares about me," usually develops gradually. It may start with subtle disappointments. You send a long message and receive a short reply. You always initiate plans, but no one initiates with you. You listen deeply to others, but when you speak, they interrupt. Over time, your brain begins to collect evidence. Cognitive psychology explains that we are meaning-making creatures. We do not simply experience events, we interpret them. If enough experiences accumulate where you feel emotionally unprioritized, the interpretation may solidify into a belief. I am not important. I am not a priority. I am on my own. When someone begins to believe that no one truly cares about them, their behavior shifts in ways that are often misunderstood. Some people withdraw. They stop sharing details about their day. They answer, "I'm fine," more often. They sit quietly in group conversations. They reduce eye contact. Psychologically, this withdrawal can be a protective strategy. If no one cares, then exposing vulnerability feels pointless and risky. The mind conserves emotional energy. The body language becomes closed, crossed arms, lowered gaze, subtle physical distancing. Internally, there may be a mixture of sadness and quiet anger. The person is grieving an expectation they once held. Others react in the opposite direction. They become hyper-independent. They say, "I don't need anyone." They pride themselves on self-reliance. They stop asking for help, even when overwhelmed. This behavior often looks strong on the outside, but psychologically it can be a defensive adaptation. When the mind concludes that care is unreliable, it shifts toward control. If I depend on no one can disappoint me. Hyper-independence is sometimes a trauma response disguised as strength. It can signal a deep fear of vulnerability and a belief that needs are burdens. There is also a third pattern, overcompensation. Some people respond to feeling uncared for by trying harder to earn care. They become the helper, the fixer, the one who remembers everyone's birthdays, the one who listens at 2 a.m., the one who never says no. On the surface, this looks generous, but psychologically, it may reveal an unconscious bargain. If I am useful enough, kind enough, selfless enough, someone will finally choose me. When this person does not receive the same energy back, the internal disappointment intensifies. Resentment builds quietly because their giving was not entirely unconditional. It was tied to a longing to be valued. Now consider what it means when someone does not show signs of caring in return. If a person rarely checks in, avoids emotional depth, or minimizes your struggles, it does not automatically mean they do not care. It may indicate emotional immaturity, avoidance patterns, or limited emotional bandwidth. Some individuals grew up in environments where emotions were dismissed. They learned to cope by suppressing rather than expressing. Their lack of visible care may reflect discomfort with vulnerability rather than lack of affection. However, when someone consistently shows indifference, fails to reciprocate effort, and dismisses emotional needs, it often reveals a self-centered orientation or an inability to form secure attachments. The day you realize no one cares is often triggered by contrast. You compare your effort with theirs. You remember how quickly you would show up for them, and you notice how slowly they show up for you. In relationships, asymmetry is psychologically destabilizing. Humans are wired for reciprocity. Social exchange theory suggests that we subconsciously evaluate fairness in relationships. When the perceived investment is unbalanced for too long, emotional exhaustion follows. In daily life, this realization appears in small scenes. You scroll through social media and see friends celebrating without inviting you. You post something meaningful and receive little engagement. You share a personal struggle and someone changes the subject. You sit in a room full of people and feel invisible. These moments activate core beliefs about worth. The inner dialogue becomes harsher. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm boring. Maybe I don't matter. Subconsciously, the brain begins scanning for more proof. This is confirmation bias. Once the belief "no one cares" is formed, the mind selectively notices evidence that supports it and filters out evidence that contradicts it. A friend may care quietly, but if they do not express it in the way you expect, your brain may dismiss it. This is why the realization can become self-reinforcing. It shapes perception. Emotionally, the immediate response may be sadness or loneliness. But beneath that often lies anger. Anger at being overlooked. Anger at giving more than receiving. Anger at realizing you were more invested than others. Some people suppress this anger, turning it inward as self-criticism. Others project it outward, becoming irritable or distant. Decision-making changes as well. A person who feels uncared for may stop putting effort into relationships. They may decline invitations, reduce communication, or emotionally detach before others can detach first. This preemptive withdrawal is a form of self-protection. Over time, if the belief solidifies, it can affect self-esteem. Self-worth is partly relational. We understand ourselves through the feedback of others. If we consistently feel unseen, we may internalize the idea that we are not valuable. This can lead to social anxiety, depressive symptoms, and even learned helplessness. When someone believes their efforts to connect do not matter, they may stop trying altogether. Motivation decreases. Productivity may decline because emotional energy is consumed by rumination. Relationships suffer deeply under this mindset. If you believe no one cares, you may test people unconsciously. You might stop texting first to see who notices. You might share something vulnerable to see if someone responds properly. If they fail the test, your belief strengthens. The tragedy is that sometimes people do care but do not know how to show it in the exact way you need. Miscommunication becomes distance. From a clinical perspective, psychologists analyze this mindset by observing patterns rather than isolated events. They listen for cognitive distortions such as overgeneralization, mind reading, and all or nothing thinking. When someone says, "No one cares about me," a therapist gently explores the evidence. Is it truly no one, or is it certain people? Are there moments of care that were overlooked? Therapists also examine early attachment experiences. Did the person feel emotionally secure as a child? Were their needs validated? Often, the intensity of the present belief is amplified by past wounds. Psychologists also observe body language and emotional reactivity. A person who feels uncared for may show flat affect when discussing relationships, or conversely, intense emotional charge. They may struggle with direct requests for support. Instead of saying, "I need you," they may say nothing and hope someone notices. This indirect communication is common among those who fear rejection. Subconsciously, they are testing whether they are important enough to be prioritized without asking. There are also people who truly experience chronic neglect or emotionally one-sided relationships. In such cases, the realization can be transformative, in a healthy way. Sometimes, recognizing that others are not invested is the beginning of boundaries. It is the moment someone stops chasing. It is the moment they redirect energy toward themselves. There is a difference between the distorted belief that no one cares and the accurate assessment that certain people do not. The former shrinks your world. The latter clarifies it. When someone shifts from seeking external validation to cultivating internal validation, everything indeed changes. Instead of asking, "Who will show up for me?" they begin asking, "How can I show up for myself?" This is not isolation. It is self-responsibility. It means learning to meet some of your own emotional needs, developing hobbies, building competence, strengthening identity. Psychologically, this shift increases internal locus of control. You stop measuring your worth by others' responses. However, there is a delicate balance. Radical self-reliance can slide into emotional isolation if not combined with healthy interdependence. Humans still need connection. The goal is not to eliminate the need for care, but to choose relationships where care flows mutually. Secure individuals do not deny their needs. They express them clearly. They do not assume mind reading. They communicate. The day you realize no one cares about you can be destructive if interpreted through the lens of worthlessness. But it can be liberating if interpreted as clarity. It can expose who is present only when convenient. It can reveal how much of your identity was built around being needed rather than being known. It can push you to evaluate whether you are surrounding yourself with emotionally unavailable people because it feels familiar. In long-term consequences, unresolved feelings of being uncared for can lead to chronic distrust. The nervous system remains on guard. Even when someone shows genuine affection, suspicion arises. Are they sincere? How long will this last? This hypervigilance is common in individuals with insecure attachment. It protects against disappointment, but also blocks intimacy. Intimacy requires risk. As a psychologist, when I sit with someone who says, "I feel like no one cares," I do not rush to reassure. I explore. I ask about their expectations, their communication patterns, their childhood, their friendships, their internal dialogue. I listen for loneliness behind anger. I observe whether their belief is global or specific. I help them differentiate between emotional neglect and unmet expectations. I guide them to test new behaviors, such as expressing needs directly rather than withdrawing silently. Behavioral experiments are powerful. If someone believes no one will respond, we might encourage them to reach out intentionally and observe the outcome. Often, the result is more nuanced than the belief predicted. Sometimes it confirms the need to change social circles. Either way, clarity replaces assumption. Ultimately, the most profound shift occurs when a person realizes that even if others do not consistently care in the way they hoped, their worth remains intact. Self-worth is not a vote determined by public opinion. It is an internal valuation. When this understanding stabilizes, the energy once spent chasing validation becomes available for growth. Decisions become less fear-based. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop performing for approval. You begin choosing environments where respect is mutual. The day you realize no one cares about you the way you expected is not the end of connection. It is the end of illusion. It is the moment you confront the difference between fantasy and reality. It can harden you, or it can mature you. It can isolate you, or it can refine your standards. Psychologically, it is a crossroads. Everything changes because your orientation changes. You no longer move through life assuming someone will rescue you emotionally. You understand that people are complex, distracted, imperfect. You learn to communicate clearly, to set boundaries, to invest where there is reciprocity. You also learn to sit with your own emotions without immediately seeking external soothing. And perhaps the most powerful transformation is this. When you stop chasing care from those who cannot give it, you create space for those who can. The realization that felt like abandonment becomes discernment. The loneliness that felt unbearable becomes a teacher. It teaches you that your value does not shrink when someone overlooks you. It teaches you that connection is chosen, not assumed. And it teaches you that sometimes the most important person who must care about you consistently, deliberately, and unconditionally is you.